A lot of us think about a large volume of data being essential to make a decision. Now the question really is not about volume of data. The real question is fidelity of the data that we have.
All right.
And in fact, it is very important to slice whatever you bring to the customer in a very deliberate way to make sure that you test your hypothesis. So
Here's another question, which is for new products, how do you approach customer testing from scratch in general?
Yeah. So I think customer testing early in the stage is the most important step. Instead of building the entire product, because products can change, your UX can change, the the best way is to actually do a prototype. So use Figma or one of the available tools where anybody can just go and easily create a prototype, put some screens, put it on your Photos app on the phone, and then basically you can use the tap method or swipe method to get people to simulate a flow.
We will try to make this session as informative both for the entrepreneurs as well as the product managers to gain something out of this session. So that's the intent of this session. And before we begin, I just wanted to quickly introduce myself. My name is Shailendra, and I and Varun, we've co-founded this company, which is Change Engine. And this is largely dedicated and focused at helping the budding entrepreneurs to get to the right kind of product and to get to the right kind of organization, identify the right models, identify the right products to be built, and then help them scale from 0 to 1. Because that is what I have done mostly throughout my product management life, whether it was at Make My Trip, where I still remember when I started there, and after a few months, few years at doing deals, when Pranav asked me to do also manage mobile, and I told him that I don't even have a smartphone. I used to have a feature phone, which was the Nokia 3310. And from there to having seen mobile in the single digit contribution to now becoming almost like 90%, 95% of overall, to having worked in multiple different organizations on different form factors from a 6.5-inch mobile to a 65-inch smart TV, which I developed at Magic Bricks, and different organizations like Max Life Insurance, Spinny, where my interest area was largely to take product from 0 to 1, and that is what we do as entrepreneurs also, right? We have a wide blank slate, and we try and start creating products around that. But a lot of times entrepreneurs fail because they don't know whether the product which they're trying to build is the right product, because that's the $1 million question. And that is what led us to found this organization, which is Change Engine, and where we're running this cohort, which is a 6-month acceleration program, where we, through a rigorous selection procedure, we take 6 entrepreneurs and we work through them for 6 months to make sure that they get from 0 to 1, and of course the whole product development cycle, and then take it all the way to go to market. So that's the intent. The current cohort is already live. There are a lot of very interesting ideas being generated, being worked upon by a lot of talented folks out there. Some of the names I'm just sharing on the screen. Some of the topics are also non-profit and impact-driven areas like outcome-based financing, or an incubator for aspiring politicians. That's a very different idea. Transgenders at workplace, and so on. And just quickly, I just wanted to mention the kind of support which we give to the entrepreneurs. Of course, there is a financial help, but just not limited to the financial help. We are connecting them to a lot of different mentors, people from the industry, and so on, and help them go through the process of company registration, legal, finance, and stuff like these, which a lot of entrepreneurs may not even be aware of when they're doing. So trying to make it as easy as possible for the entrepreneurs to get up and running. And this is the founding team led by Varun, who was the founder of Aspiring Minds, very successful exit, sold that company to SHL. He's also an NSIT alum, which is where I come from, which is where Pranav comes from. and he did his master's from MIT, and in an area which now we all know of, but at that point when he did in 2006-7, which is a artificial intelligence, it was less heard of. And we have Shubham Bansal, who is also a Y Combinator candidate and is from IIT Delhi. He's helping us lead the impact vertical there. And we have this session series of startup bootcamp sessions, which is what we are initiating today by Pranav Bhasin. And we have a list of others, which we will do. Every Thursday, we are trying to do one of these. And I'm very, very happy. And I want to share that we are starting this with Pranav on this topic, very interesting topic on how do you accelerate your startup with product discovery and MVP mastery. So that's the topic which we are going to discuss. And coming to the agenda today, talking about Pranav. Pranav is a director at Amazon. He's been working with Amazon for last 5-6 years now, and both in India, Bangalore, and now in Seattle, in the US. And he has over 23 years of experience in product management, entrepreneurship, largely, and worked in various companies like Make My Trip. Liveblog was his own startup, which he ran for almost 4 years. This was like before even Facebook came in, and very similar to an on lines of Facebook and Instagram, but way ahead of its time. And also worked with Trilogy, which was one of the most coveted companies at our times. From a campus placement perspective, I remember one of the most iconic companies for engineers, especially. So that's the introduction of Pranav. And with that, we move on to the topic for today, which is what we are going to discuss about how do entrepreneurs and product managers think about getting to the right product, or think about working on the right kind of features. And I'm sure, Pranav, you as an entrepreneur have seen this journey, but also at Make My Trip, we worked on multiple products there. Some of them were 0 to 1 products like deals, and even mobile was like a new platform, at least, if not a new product. Even at Amazon, I'm sure there is like no dearth of new ideas and stuff to do, right? All product managers know of is standard prioritization framework and stuff, which are, of course, sounding good in principle. But when you come to apply these concepts, what is the framework or thought process which you apply, which you can recommend when you have to pick the right kind of product or right kind of features to start working on? So how is it that you differentiate between what should be done, what should be picked up first, and what are the other things which are left uncovered? So
Yes, absolutely. No, first of all, I just want to say thanks, Shailendra, for having me here. And I'm super excited about everything that you are doing on Change Engine. I know in our times nothing like this existed.
yeah,
So it's really good to see that there is a forum and a platform where folks out of college can actually get started in their entrepreneurial journey.
yeah.
And Yeah, 23 years makes me feel pretty old.
I just
But
created this
hopefully we can
slide that
count that as experience.
yeah, yeah,
Okay. So coming to your question, yeah, I think, see, building a product eventually is about solving a need for the customer. At the crux of it, I just like to think about it in first principles.
yeah,
And therefore, if we basically talk about building a product or building a company, it needs to solve an inherent need.
yeah,
Now, there are a lot of ideas, of course, floating around. There are ideas that you get when you're using a product and you say, oh, I wish something existed in this product. And if nobody else is building it, why don't I go and jump in and build it? Or it may just be a greenfield area where you basically say, hey, this is a big open space. I see a lot of opportunity. Why don't we do something over here? So ideas just, there can be 20 ideas that spark within the same day in different ways.
yeah.
And it's generally good to keep note of those if you're thinking about entrepreneurship, because you don't want to lose your chain of thought when you're getting an idea.
Hmm.
But the key thing is that once you have those ideas in your mix, how do you figure out what is the right idea?
Yeah.
I think that is a super important decision, because once you make that decision, then you spend a lot of energy behind it.
Hmm.
And literally, all any idea that you pick up will require 120% of your time, maybe 150% of your time to make it successful.
Yeah.
Therefore, choosing the right one becomes really important. So that's kind of the first step in my mind. Now, once you have identified a zone, then you basically say, hey, how do I take it to market? How do I validate
Hmm.
that it is really the thing that customers want?
Yeah.
And that validation is really important, both from a market size and from how that idea is actually going to uh, be presented to the customers. And I have some examples from Make My Trip that
Hmm.
I can use to illustrate that.
Yeah.
And then eventually it is to basically say, hey, how do I launch a minimum viable product? How do I get something out in the market that real customers are using? And then that kind of gets your flywheel kicking
Right.
in your entrepreneurial journey. So I can actually touch upon, let me start by touching upon a little bit more on the first one, which is a, how do you identify
Because
uh,
it's very important, as you said, because when we keep talking to a lot of students, right, most of the ideas ironically are around the problems which they face as a student. So some people will say, I want to create a note taking app because they are the ones who are facing problem in taking notes in the class, or I want to take a note sharing kind of. And most of the ideas are is in fact the ones which they are facing. They don't realize that they can potentially be one user, but that does not represent the outsiders, right? That doesn't represent the
absolute.
wider persona. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I think that is actually the biggest mistake in
Yeah.
most cases. Because if you think of yourself as the user for everything, it is, the easiest way to fail.
Yeah.
In fact, I would say that I kind of simply look at it as, let us pick up any product.
Mm.
Now, when I see myself using it,
Mm.
I gravitate towards different kinds of products. When I see my 10-year-old son using products, he gravitates towards a very different kind of product. And when I see my dad using products, he is a very, very different kind of user. I'm just using those three examples to say that it could be the same product, but presented to a different person might be the difference between success and failure.
So you're saying
So
not just three different kinds of product, but same product being used by three different people will be used very, very differently.
yeah, so that is assuming that the product is actually relevant to all three.
Yeah.
But the broader point is that when you're starting off a new idea,
Mm.
uh, you need to actually pick a user segment
Yeah.
that is large enough for your product to operate at scale. So if you were to just do spreadsheet math and you were to say, in this particular segment, and I'm emphasizing the term segment,
Mm.
uh, there are so many users. Out of those users, X% face this problem.
Mm.
And out of that X%, the part that I'm building will solve a problem for Y% of them immediately.
Mm.
Then you kind of have a funnel view to say, hey, I'm starting with a niche
Mm.
that where I'm really solving a very core problem that
Mm.
they would love to use my product today.
Mm.
And then I have enough room to expand and scale the solution to make it a large enterprise. And then, yeah, there will be maybe variants of those products or other product lines that cater to other uh, uh, segments, but
Yeah.
that I don't care about.
Right.
As long as the first two are large enough, you are in the right space. And the best way to validate this
Mm.
is actually to talk to the real customer.
Mm.
So I recommend this exercise to everybody, where
Mm.
I would say, hey, you think of an idea, you should think about, imagine the customer who's using this product, and
Mm.
write down what that customer looks like in to the last level of detail. This is called building the persona. A lot of marketing folks use it, and maybe you
Yeah.
some of you read it in your curriculum.
Yeah.
Write down like this I this product, like pick up a name and say, hey, I am a Pranav is a 23-year-old person who studies in so and so college. He stays in Delhi. He has two brothers, one sister. so much in the family. He typically does XYZ during the day. Right? Get into the
Yeah.
specific details and put your imagination on paper.
Mm.
What that helps you do is it helps you figure out what kind of a customer is the right customer for your product.
Yeah.
Then the next step is you need to find a way to get a few of those customers. Now that is easy enough because you can ask your friends and family. You can use forums like the change agent and other ways to say, hey, can I find 10 people who match this description that I jotted down?
Hmm.
And then you actually go and just meet with them. This is a step that a lot of folks shy away from. Like it is pretty easy to say, "Hey, I'm sitting in a room. I'm thinking of an idea. Let me start coding
Mm.
and building something."
Mm.
Uh, Resist that temptation. You go and talk to those 10 people that you've identified and just discuss. Hey, this is what I'm planning to do. This is what I'm planning to build. What do you think about it? Right?
Mm.
Open-ended questions.
Mm.
Listen to them. That is the most important part. Active listening is a big part of it, and when once you listen to them, you get a lot of insights. And really, what you are doing is this: you are going into that discussion with a hypothesis in your mind,
Yeah.
and you are trying to poke holes in there. You are trying to disprove your hypothesis, right?
Mm.
And you have to very seriously try to disprove it and kill that idea. And anything that you find hard to kill in those 8 or 10 conversations where you see, oh, I really see people wanting this thing. And I tried very hard to, make sure that, hey, there are like 10 reasons why this will not work. But those 10 people seem really excited about it. Like if you see customer excitement, then that is, you are moving in the right direction.
That's a
And
very
then you can really take
interesting
the next.
thing that you said, because most of the people do it the other way, which is they have hypothesis, they believe that this will work, and they're looking for ideas or reasons why it may not work. Rather, what you're saying, that go with the hypothesis that it will not work and look for reasons why it may work, and the other way. Yeah.
Exactly, exactly. And I can share a story from Life Blog. So
Yeah.
we actually made the same mistake.
Right.
So when we were starting Life Blog,
Yeah.
our starting idea was not a social network.
Okay.
Our starting idea was that hey, we want to build an ads platform where we are able to use information from the conversations people are having
Mm.
to provide targeted advertisements.
Okay.
Now, this was 2007.
Mm.
Social networks were not big.
Mm.
Twitter had just launched, and Facebook had also just launched in US, I think.
Or could
Uh,
be probably.
Orkut was the biggest in India. I don't know how many folks remember it or have used it. It's kind of in the dead pool now. so, so so we basically then said, hey, how do we get to these conversations? So
Right.
we got to build a social network.
Right.
Okay. So when we started thinking about building a social network, we said, okay, what is the untapped need? And in Orkut or MySpace at that time,
Mm-hmm.
people used to generally use social networks as scrapbooks across rock
Right.
bands or across their own pages. So we said, hey, let's build a real social network where you can put up your photo and you can actually share your life moments with others. And around that, when you have conversations, those are real conversations, so we understand who you really are. And then we'll do an ad network, right? So now we are 3 steps away from what we started off with.
Yeah.
Now, when we started building this network, what we realized is that people really love to post photos. Nobody really wants to type text.
Right.
And this was still desktop.
Yeah.
Mobile was not big in those days. But that was a big realization because eventually we realized that, hey, if you don't have text,
Hmm.
then you don't have any information for ad targeting.
Yeah.
So what are you going to do about it, right?
Exactly.
Now, when we got to this stage, it was a year and a half of bootstrapping, and we basically burned through a lot of our savings, and now we are sitting there and basically thinking about that a fundamental thesis of what we were trying to do is now completely flawed because we don't even get that data, right?
Yeah.
Now, rather than realizing it a year and a half down,
Right.
you should be able to realize it in
Right.
the first month and a half of seriously pursuing an idea. And that's kind of the point that I'm trying to make over here.
Mhm. Understood. That's very interesting. In fact, I remember when at a Make My Trip also when we were launching some of the new verticals, and there were days where we went to the houses of people and sat there and talked to them about what is the need and so on. And in fact, went to Bangalore also because there is one thing that Delhi people might behave differently, Bangalore people might behave differently,
Exactly.
and it's not
Exactly.
just that you have spoken to two three people from one geography and you're done, especially if your product is. And that brings me to the second one is that especially at Amazon, as you said that you have a persona in mind, right? Amazon is used by everybody. Or for example, things like Facebook or Twitter, although Instagram might, you can say that they have a core TG or persona defined that this age group. But Amazon, for example, will be used by a shopkeeper also, a CEO also, a professional also, a housewife also. Doing a product for Amazon kind of an organization, how difficult is that? And are there any ways to solve that kind of problem also?
Yeah, I think this answer may not be as relevant to this group, but I'll kind of rewind back to early days of Amazon.
Yeah,
So if you recall, Amazon started with just books.
books. Yeah,
Why books? Because everybody reads books.
right.
If you look at late 90s, if you are not reading a book, it is very unlikely that you are going to be on internet. So that's about identifying the segment, right?
Hmm.
So it's when you start writing down the persona, if that persona says, that hey, I read 5 books in a month and so on, like that kind of those kinds of clues trigger you to
Yeah,
what is the zone in which you should play.
right.
The second reason for books was really that very hard to damage in shipments. And when you are starting out a new business, you need to figure out how will you build customer confidence.
Yeah,
So if you're basically saying, hey, there's a large enough segment of people who read books, and then my biggest risk is products getting broken during shipping, and I don't want to ship glass items or anything in home decor and so on. What is the least risky thing? It is a book.
yeah,
And then when you build your entire business around it, and Amazon actually went IPO just with books. So
yeah,
that kind of gives you a sense of how large a business can be with just one segment if you identify that segment well.
yeah,
And then, of course, when you start getting into other categories, then the only way to operate a business is to, slice and dice and say, hey, this particular category is relevant for this particular cohort. And then you start looking cohort backwards to say, to define your products and the relevance of those products. But I always remember this early days example to think about how we bootstrap. Similarly, actually jumping into some MMT examples that you were
mhm,
talking
mhm,
about.
mhm.
So deals, if you recall,
Yeah,
we didn't go around building a full-fledged deals product. What
yes,
what did we
yes.
do?
It
We
was a
basically said,
WordPress.
hey,
Yeah,
yeah. So let's have a server. Our
yeah,
hypothesis was this. Our hypothesis was that in travel, your inventory uh, goes to 100% loss if you're not able to sell it in time, right? A hotel room that's going empty is of no value to anybody. A flight that goes unbooked is no value to anybody, both the airline and uh, the uh,
it is. Yeah.
the agent that's trying to make the booking.
Hmm.
So now our hypothesis was, how close can we get to the point where we start giving you discounts so that it does not cannibalize a regular business,
Hmm.
but it is able to ideally help us sell all vacant hotel rooms and all empty flight seats. So we started off with a random number like, hey, what if we were to start running deals 3 years or
Hmm.
three days before the due date,
Hmm.
right? Uh, and then we had a hypothesis on how much discount. So we said, okay, what if we give 10% discount? Now the question really was, hey, do customers actually book flights Do they even need flights 3 days before departure? Like, who needs a flight 3 days before departure? People generally book a month before. Who needs a hotel 3 day? Won't you want to be comfortable uh, in a confirmation that I have a hotel room wherever I'm traveling, maybe a month in advance as well, right? Uh, so what we did was very interesting. We actually put up a server. We put up a WordPress site. We just said we
Yeah.
will handcraft articles which have the location photograph, which have description of the deal, which basically says here is the discount you're gonna get. We had a manual way, a call center based way to call back customers to get payments and confirm.
The payment was also not integrated fully. Yeah.
Payment was also not
You
integrated.
had
We
to
just
submit
used
your
it as
own.
lead gen.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then we iterated on this for almost a month or 2 months, and Shailendra had joined at that time. And what we really validated was the elasticity of time and price.
Yeah.
How close can you squeeze it? What happens if you were to run the deal a day before? What is the uptake? 3 days before, 7 days before. So we kind of oscillated between 1 to 7 days. We instrumented the numbers and we measured the data to say, hey, what does the conversion look like? Similarly, we changed the price threshold from 10% all the way up to 50% and oscillated between it to figure out. Now, very interesting realizations. At 50%, people start becoming suspicious that, hey, something is off. Like, why am I getting a flight at 50% off?
Yeah.
Something seems wrong with this plane or something. I'm not going to book. At 30%, the conversion rate was highest. At 10%, it was perhaps not interesting enough for people to buy. Between flights and hotels, there were very different learnings as well. That people love to book flights early.
Hmm.
People do not book hotels until they reach the destination. So hotels work much more beautifully a day before
Yeah.
than flights did.
Yeah.
And those are things we just couldn't imagine sitting in there. We just had to, bring it out, put it out in the front of the customer, and try those hypotheses to really understand what works and what does not. And having those hypotheses written on paper, I would say, is a very important step as you jump from, hey, I have nailed down the idea and now I want to start bringing it to customers. Another example that comes to mind is Airbnb. Actually, when they started, they didn't start by building a website. They actually put up Craigslist ads.
Hmm.
And they basically put up ads that mentioned that, hey, we have rooms open in our apartment or in our home that we are willing to rent out for X dollars a day. Whoever wants can just drop us a mail and we'll book it. And that was how they validated whether people, their biggest risk was whether people will feel safe and comfortable staying in somebody else's home. You don't even know who that person is. It
Yeah.
could be pretty risky to stay.
Right.
Uh, and they used ads to validate the biggest risks. So if you eliminate biggest risks in your business early in the cycle, then you will have smooth sailing later on. And that's what this entire MVP proof of concept stage is about. And again, validate with real customers. That is really, really key.
I think this is a great learning from for all the entrepreneurs, especially, and I talk to a lot of them nowadays, is that they think that they have to have a very tangible, almost near perfect product before they can go out to the market, etc. And here we are talking about Make My Trip, which was also and which is also India's largest online travel agency, doing a not a meaningful but still a sizable business or an experiment purely, like the way a college pass out people or fresh graduates will do it, right? Not fully integrating, because what is not that we could not do it. The point is that there were a lot of things which were preventing us from going fast to execute that, because when you work in big organizations, the things which will stop you from going all the way and doing it fast. But we that didn't let us stop there, and we could have waited and said let the entire integration happen and so on, and then we will see, but that would have been too late. And but for the MVP, we just wanted to go fast, and that should be a lesson for all the entrepreneurs, especially that you need to be very clear what is the hypothesis which you want to test, and what is the bare minimum which is required to test that. It does not matter if the full product is ready or not, because you might go all the way to create a full product, but it might be too late, and the learnings might tell you, as in your case in live blog, you realize later, much later, that it's the text is not even there and people are just using images and all, so you cannot use it. There is a question from Arul Prakash is saying that how many data points do you use to have the insights over the month? And for an early startup, reaching those numbers might not be feasible. What suggestion to validate such hypothesis with a smaller group?
Yeah, actually, very interesting question because a lot of us think about a large volume of data being essential to make a decision. Now, the question really is not about volume of data. The real question is fidelity of the data that you have. Now, probing that further, let me take an example. In Amazon, even in Make My Trip, let us say that you are tracking conversion data for a particular cohort and you have large volume, so you do see a lot of data. Now, let's say a customer actually calls you and tells you that, hey, I tried this particular thing, it just doesn't work, like your products are. Uh, which one? But you look at the data, you say, oh, I have a lot of data, a lot of customers are able to use it, but you are telling me it doesn't work for you.
Yeah.
What do you do?
Which
Right?
one do you believe? Your
Which
data?
one do you pick up?
Yeah.
Now, we always believe that customers are right. And every single time we have taken those anecdotes and acted on it, we have found defects in our systems that maybe were related to that particular cohort, the setup that they had, how they were approaching the product, or what they were trying to do, or the payment method they were using. And there could be hundreds of things that were not working for them. But the meta point that I'm making is this: you don't need a lot of data to make decisions.
Mm.
That one data point is a lot more powerful than months of data that you may have aggregated or collected in your system. The reality is that when you have volumes of data, you lose fidelity. Your fidelity is as good as the metric that you are creating, and therefore it is easy to get lost in averages. And when you are in early stages, don't make that mistake. Don't wait for data to be collected. You go and talk to people, show them show them a paper mock, show them a Figma design, uh, put up a uh, early stage thing on an image on your smartphone and let them tap on it and stuff like that. I mean, but just go and talk to them, interact with them, get those anecdotes. They'll be far more valuable than anything. uh, I can give another example from Make My Trip, uh, where we actually, knowing everything we do today, we still got into the temptation of building a product and then eventually realized how do we make it work. So this was Route Planner. If you
Yeah.
recall,
Yeah.
we basically said that we are actually constraining customers to book flights separately, hotels separately, cabs separately, buses separately, rails separately. We sell all of these, but they have to kind of go to a different place to book all of these. And then if you are basically planning a journey from Ajmer to Thanjavur, any two cities in India, it is super hard for you to plan travel. So how do we make it easy? So we said, oh, what if we had a route planner solution where you give two cities, we have the entire graph database, and we will find you optimal paths between those two cities, and then book the cab and bus and trail and flight combinations, and we'll give you the fastest, most economical, and then the most popular options as the top three. But there could be millions of possible routes. Like with the network that we have in India, there are several million possibilities. So it was actually a NP hard problem, very exciting to solve by building a graph database. Now, we actually talk to customers, and in this case, a lot of customers, the way we described the product, they felt that they will have the need for it. So it kind of passed the smell test. When we built it out, it took us, I think, a year and a half, 2 years to build it out and launch it. What we skipped in that whole process was, because this was technically challenging. We did not do a lot of intermediate customer outreaches. So when we launched it, what we realized is that the number of people who need to go from smaller cities is actually small. So that usage is not there because that need is there, but the frequency of that need is not very high. How many times does a person travel from Ajmer to Tanjore? Most of the times business travelers are actually going from their city to a metro to do business. So person from Ajmer traveling to Delhi, they know what bus they want, they regularly travel on that bus, or they know the combination of bus flight that they need to get to that city, they do their business, they come back the same route. So it kind of becomes a habit, it becomes predictable. And then the percentage of people who go on these offbeat combinations is very, very limited.
Hmm.
uh, and that was an insight that came up much later. Eventually, we realized that if we were to use this engine to create pages from all possible destination pairs in India and then put them on SEO, that becomes a really good traffic driver for us to acquire customers. But again, I'm just using that example to illustrate that you need to be very intentional in going and poking holes in, like, why would this idea not work? There are always so many nuanced reasons why something may not work, and a lot of that is not obvious on the surface.
So on this example only, what you could have done more or better or differently?
I think here what we missed was in putting the persona right, because we basically broadly said, hey, everybody needs to travel at some point. People travel for vacation, people travel for business, and so on, and everybody needs to go from point A to point B. The
Hmm.
mistake we made was we generalized the problem and we said, hey, it's broadly applicable to everybody, which is true in a way, but what is not true is how many times in a year do you need that capability, right? If you need it once in 2 years, then it's not a viable solution. So there's a frequency element to that usage
Hmm.
that we completely missed. And that was the learning. So I think if we had put more thought into the persona, or if we had defined the persona in a way where we had said, who is going to use this product once a month or
Hmm.
once a week?
Yeah.
uh, we put some criteria like that and then describe that person and then gone and talk to those people, then we would have very quickly realized that, hey, I don't really need that information because I have I know what buses I need and what flights I take, because here are three cities that I travel
Hmm.
between 99% of the time, and that's that. I don't need any more information.
Yeah. No, there are two things which I'm noting it down first, which is very important that, and now I think at least from tomorrow onwards, I will try to use this immediately, which is not going with the premise that why will it work versus go with the premise that why it will not work and look for reasons why it may not work rather than the other way. Because most of the times we are very optimistic about our own product, and entrepreneurs have to be optimistic also, but in the beginning at least they have to have this, they have to wear this black hat and make sure that they doubt a lot of these. Or maybe in the founding team you have one person who is at least doubting things.
Yeah,
That might be a
yeah.
good idea.
Six thinking hats
Yeah, exactly.
approach is good. Like if you have one skeptic in the team and then the one optimist,
Yeah,
then that's
that
a
might
good
be a good
combination.
idea. And second point is that, um, which you said that for make my trip kind of companies also, and big companies also, there are people who may make mistake in this. So there are, it's not that once you cross a certain stage you have overcome that. You always have to wear this hat and keep checking the premise. It is not that only for
Yeah,
entrepreneurs or first products. Yeah.
yeah. It's actually easier to make mistakes in larger companies
Yeah.
because you want to move fast and you want to grow things and
And you also
believe.
think you figured out, you think that now hame pata hai, like we know this.
Exactly. Like you have that false precision that I know the customer, I'm already running a business, and therefore this new product will
Right,
work.
right.
Not always true.
Right. And because things also keep changing, evolving, and
Yeah.
users' behavior also keep evolving, changing. So that's and one thing which I was mentioning was, which I slipped was on. mostly engineers, and you kind of mentioned that this product problem looked very enticing and exciting to work on. I think a lot of times I've seen mostly engineers getting fascinated by a new technology or a hard problem, and they will just fall in love with solving that problem without realizing whether solving this is going to make any impact on anybody's life or not. And they're just so passionate about using a certain technology. Like everybody will talk about chat gpt, and everybody will talk about using llms and stuff without actually thinking from a user perspective whether this is needed or not. But they just
Yeah.
want to put a fancy thing or a new thing. And that's one thing which I want to warn almost all entrepreneurs, that don't fall for a uh, just a fancy thing or a difficult problem. Don't fall
No,
in love.
and in fact, it is very important to slice whatever you bring to the customer in a very deliberate way to make sure that you test your hypothesis. So I'm kind of repeating myself, but there is a way of building an MVP where you say, hey, I will launch feature one and then feature two and feature three. Now, let's say that if I were building this mobile app or this route planner solution, and I say, hey, my first feature is the navigation panel. I build the navigation panel. I can't go to customers with that. I mean, I can't even present it to a customer and say, hey, here is something I'm building. What do you think about it?
Yeah.
Uh, then you say next week, okay, now I have a page built which basically shows some information. So the point I'm making is that there is a feature based way of cutting the product, and the problem with that method is that you cannot present it to customers to get early feedback. But there is a different way of cutting the product, which is what we did well in deals. Solve the problem end to end, which is, hey, what do customers want? They want to get a travel booking at a discount. How do I make that entire thing happen? How do I solve that problem in a scrappy way without building everything? I
Mhm.
solve that problem by putting a page, manually entering information, and then basically saying, hey, I don't want to integrate payments. I'll call them back and get those payments differently. Or Airbnb saying that, hey, I'll just put up an ad on Craigslist describing that I have free rooms. Like those are scrappy ways in which you are actually solving, going end to end. You are saying, here is the problem I'm solving, here is a solution that actually solves that problem. Yes, the solution is not fully built. Yes, it could be technically superior and so on. But whatever I have today solves it end to end, and I can go to the customer, get them to try it out, and then tell me whether it works for them or solves a problem for them or not.
Got
Very, very important how you slice it.
Yeah, very interesting. Uh, I think I have one more question, and before we open it up for audience and others to ask question, which is one of my question which I always keep thinking about when I think of Amazon, and I think you are the right person probably to answer that. Is that when we think of customer centricity, Amazon comes number one, right? In fact, in their vision statement only, they talk about to be the most customer centric organization. Now when you become such a big organization, like we often say this to entrepreneurs, that you have to keep thinking about customers and stuff, and a CEO is always has to touch base with the customer and so on. But if you become such a big organization like Amazon and still being able to uh, keep that intact customer centricity, what is the magic there? And how what can entrepreneurs learn from that? Because of course most of the entrepreneurs would want to grow, and the organization to grow and so on. But what is it that maybe if they start from day one, they will keep having that DNA in place? So what is that which you can tell us?
Yeah, I think that's a great question because I think for Amazon, it is the customer centricity that kind of binds all the teams.
Yeah.
Because different people can have different perspectives and different opinions on what the product should be, what decisions should be made.
Mhm.
So when you basically have those discussions, just having a customer perspective to say, hey, we all have ideas, we all have these perspectives, but what does the customer really need?
Yeah.
It kind of focuses people in the right direction. So
Right.
that's point number one.
Right.
Point number two, I gave that example of anecdotes versus data. When we obviously have lots of data that we use to make product decisions, but anecdotes any day trump data. and that again goes on to say how how customers and how listening into customers can actually shine the light on edge scenarios that you would not be able to find otherwise, or that would get lost in averages.
Mm,
Third is that I remember Jeff saying it very famously that customers have divine discontent,
mm,
and therefore they always find or they always give you new ways to improve products,
mm,
right? Because if we think about it in Amazon terms, you would say, hey, you know, you definitely don't want fewer products. You want more products to be available for purchase.
mm.
You definitely don't want them to come to you slower. You want them faster,
Understood.
right? And therefore, when you just think about it from a customer's point of view, and you say, hey, I launched a product, it got to stage A, it is solving a certain problem at a certain level. You go back to the customer and then say, hey, last time I met you 6 months ago, you told me XYZ. Now I have a product, it works, it solves a problem. Have I solved it completely? The interesting thing is that customers will say they are there is very less likelihood that they'll say, hey, you solved my problem, I don't have anything else for you, case closed. They'll
I
basically say, yes, it solves this, but here are three other things that I could get help with. Now, those three things are seeds for your next iteration or your next idea in some cases,
mm,
and you get a lot of that from customers. So, interacting with customers face to face or in a actual conversation is perhaps the most important thing that you could ever do as an entrepreneur. Don't discount that. It works in all stages of your entrepreneurial journey.
got it. Understood. All right. We have around 10, 15 minutes left. So maybe we can take a few questions. Anybody who wants to ask can unmute and or raise your hand. I will allow you to speak. So Arul Prakash has a question. What sort of KPIs do you use for a product like MMT, where frequency is very low? You are unable to use DAU and MAU as a right metric because the need arises only once in 3 months. Yeah.
Yeah. Now, the I would actually challenge why would that be your persona?
Hmm.
Because if you deliberately choose a persona where the person needs to use your product once in 3 months, there's something odd about it. Internet businesses are generally built on high frequency use cases. Social networking, you send tens of messages every day. Uh, Commerce, you make purchases almost every day. Whether you make them online or not is different, but you need to buy and sell stuff every day, and so on. So anything that is a human need is generally a high frequency use case. If you are deliberately picking up something that is low frequency, then I guess you have to be very clear about why that is the thing that you want to go after.
Mhm. But
And
his
I wouldn't worry about DAU, MAU. I don't think you'll have those metrics early on. Don't worry too much about those.
exactly.
But at least in the conceptual stage, I just validate, the idea and make sure that it's a need for some cohort that you can talk to and validate.
And if I may add, see the thing is, if depends upon which stage you are in, right? At MMT, which the stage they are in, their DAU MAUs are pretty much sort of sorted because it's largely a function of the marketing and all. But also from a product perspective, the metrics which used to take care were mostly around either retention, repeat, also the funnel, which is the very core metric, right? So how many people are coming to the listing page, detail page, finally checking out, what is the case size for if you're talking about hotel and so on. So those are the kind of metric which we uh, used to look at, and not necessarily the MAU, DAU largely.
Yeah, in fact, I would say if the question was largely to understand what metrics should we use for generally a product, I'd basically say that metrics should be defined customer backwards, and rather like DAU, MAU are, I would just say, more generalized ways of looking at engagement.
Yeah.
Uh, but for your use case, for your product, you could say, hey, what is considered engaging, and then you could actually have a better metric that reflects that engagement. So hypothetically, if you do have a product that is used once in 3 months, then you may be better off with a metric with a couple of metrics. The first one basically saying uh, average use in last 3 months. Build that metric. It may not be available out of the box uh, in the analytic solution, but build that metric. Then you would want to do something around retention. That hey, assuming you are coming up once every 3 months, are you coming repeatedly? So you could say, hey, last 12 months, what is the frequency of your visits? Is it if the average is less than 4, then you should be worried about it. Stuff like that. So just work backwards from your customer, your product definition, and then put these phrases down to define what metrics you should measure, and then go and instrument them.
Yeah. There's another question, which is for new products, how do you approach customer testing from scratch in general?
Yeah. So I think customer testing early in the stage is the most important step. Uh, Instead of building the entire product, because products can change, your UX can change, the the best way is to actually do a prototype. So use Figma or one of the available tools where anybody can just go and easily create a prototype. Put some screens, put it on your Photos app on the phone, and then basically you can use the tap method or swipe method to get people to simulate a flow. And then when you go to a user to test out that particular product, you should be clear about what are you testing. Like, are you basically testing the core concept, in which case you will be looking at or observing different things, versus are you in slightly more advanced stages where you want input on UX, in which case you will be looking at, hey, are they trying to tap the right buttons on the screen, versus if you are basically saying, hey, my UX is finalized, but I want to really validate whether the messaging resonates, then you will really be looking at how do they react to the messaging. I distinctly remember in certain cases, we basically had a product that was getting translated in multiple languages, and we had a payment screen. And in English, the product used to say, "Hey, enter your account details." Sorry, it was a registration screen. So in English, it used to say, "Create your account." And in Hindi, it would say, "Apna account create करें," और नीचे there was a box. So a lot of Hindi customers intuitively thought that we were asking for their bank account number.
Hmm.
And when we showed that prototype, they were like, "अरे मैं बैंक अकाउंट नंबर क्यों दूं आपको?
Hmm.
आप मेरा पैसा निकाल लोगे." And we were like, "No, no, no, we are asking you for your email ID because we want you to create an account." So that concept of account was alien, and we got a big learning in how we should talk. So just as an example.
Yeah, that's very interesting. Because when going vernacular, anyway, that's a different topic. But a lot of learnings around when you're going either international for a lot of entrepreneurs who want to or trying out for different countries, not just for India. There are different nuances of that particular nation, that culture, and a lot of these things which you have to make sure you get into. Or if you're creating things for the Bharat, as we say, right, the tier two, tier three cities, whenever we think we are the customer and we create something which is very, very intuitive for us, may not be as intuitive for other people.
Yeah. Yeah. But eventually you need to validate it in stages. So to close the loop on this question, I would say first you need validation on the concept. Like, is there a need? And do I have the right segment in mind? validate that first. Then you can go back to the same customer again and say, hey, now I have some screens. I want you to play around with it. Give me overall feedback on whether this is the product that solves the need that we discussed. Then you can go back to them again. Hey, now I have more refined UX. Why don't you tap around it? Hey, feedback on communication and final mocks and so on. So it can be an iterative process.
Yeah. Anybody else? Any other question? Okay, so I think we can wrap up, Pranav. Any final comment or message for the entrepreneurs, especially who are trying to think of new ideas? Of course, whatever you said was all meaningful, but any last comments on?
Yeah, I think the thing that I would emphasize is that if you don't start, you'll never know what it could have been.
Hmm.
So get started today, and it is okay to make mistakes. It is okay to fail and learn from it. I mean, in fact, I read somewhere that some of these prolific composers, Mozart or Bach, only 1% of their compositions ever made it to public. 99% of them actually they iterated, they composed something, and then they completely threw it away. Literally, if you look at it, if you the best way to succeed is actually to fail faster. So if you eliminate all possible ways in which you can fail, you will find the right path, and it's a meandering path. You'll have to try out at each step, try out your hypothesis and figure out what doesn't work. But I'm kind of going in with emphasizing that counterintuitive advice. Try hard to figure out what doesn't work and try hard to figure that out fast. And that's the sure shot way of figuring out a successful path and a large enterprise over the longer run.
Yeah, I think that is my learning also. I think you've mentioned it again and again, and I've made a note of this that uh, go in with the philosophy that something will not work, and then try and find out reasons from the customers why it may work. And the other point which I've noted, which I found very interesting, was even one data point is good enough, and that can actually offset a lot of data which you might a data point around from the customer directly might be good enough. And that actually reminds me of that famous example, right, of that the car which liked vanilla ice cream. I'm not sure if you've heard. It's a long story when people can probably search, because we don't have that time. It is from General Motors, and it's a real example of one when some person complained that their car actually likes vanilla ice cream and no other ice cream. And how did that? So that I won't reveal the answer. You can Google for that, and it's a very interesting story on how if you're passionate about customers, and if there is a customer complaint or an escalation or an issue, you don't just leave it, because you might have just left saying that how can a car like vanilla ice cream, but they went into it, try to understand and reveal a major problem in the engine. So, and similarly for Amazon, I think, which Pranav said, and I can say largely for Make My Trip also, there was a lot of focus, and large companies definitely, mostly product based companies, and by definition will have a lot of focus on consumers, because product companies are built on customers insights and consumers insights. So that is what my takeaway has been. I'm sure a lot of people would have taken notes and tried to understand this. This recording will also be available on YouTube. Pretty soon we'll share the link once it gets uploaded. And I'm also sharing the link of the program, the ACE program. I think Akshat has also shared. So if there are people who are thinking of doing something or starting something of their own, feel free to register here and get in touch with us. And if we are equally passionate about the idea which you have, and if you believe that you can be a part of the cohort, we'll be happy to take you in. Thank you so much, Pranav. Thank you for your time, and it was great having you and chatting with you again.
Good, and thanks for having me here. Thank you all for your time today. And it was exciting to interact with you. And yeah, love all the stuff that you are doing at Change Agent.